grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and my parents are both doctors. Whole family is doctors. Actually, I was born in India, Pondicherry, India. We already lived here, but my parents went back to India to have me, so I'm Indian. Indian citizenship, and they're all doctors. My uncles and aunts are all doctors, and we have everything from obstetrician, who's my mom, to a coroner, who's my aunt. So birth to death, everything in between, and it was, I guess it was kind of assumed that I was going to be a doctor. I kind of assumed that too. And slowly, over between in my teenage years, when I was 11 to 16, kind of realized that I had this other thing that I was really, really interested in, and that was making films. So slowly decided to become a filmmaker. I get asked the question a lot about whether the Indian culture influenced, the Indian American mix influenced filmmaking, and it never occurred to me, because it's not like you sit outside yourself and say, this is really unusual, but perhaps the acceptance that the body is not the end of your life, that the spirit continues, is something that I just accept, because all these Indian ceremonies about ghosts or spirits in the house and protecting the house from spirits, and it's just an accepted thing over there, and so it was something that I just assumed was common, but I guess it's not. And so in that respect, all my scripts, I think, have a certain spirituality that is fairly unusual for a young guy in Philly playing ball, eating Big Macs to have. Each movie I tell is, you want to tell a little bit about who you are, a part of your life, and my first film was kind of going to India and learning about my heritage, and the second movie was about my Catholic school experience, 10 years of that, and this one was kind of about my childhood, being scared all the time. Don't go outside, it's too dark, don't go in that room, don't go downstairs, it's scary. Everything really did scare me. I was a very timid kid, and the fear of what is in the other room, what is down the hall, is so scary. This is kind of an example of what I consider fear. Is when I got home, one day, went with my family to the mall. We came home, pulled into the driveway, and the front door was open. It was nighttime, and the car stops, and everybody's quiet, and I'm like, what? And I look, and I was probably like 12, 13. I look, and the front door is wide open. My dad's like, somebody's in the house, and everybody's silent. And my dad, for some reason, takes the dog and goes in the house to check it out, like he's Rambo or something. But he goes in, and I was scared to death, and that was one level of fear. But then he comes out and he goes, nobody was in there. It was just the mat got stuck in the door, and the door swung open with the wind. And he's like, wow, you know what was really scary? And I said, what, Dad? And he goes, I just got this picture of some crazy person sitting on the edge of the bed waiting for me. And that image was like, I had nightmares forever, and that is kind of the Vincent scene in the movie, was come home and there's someone waiting for you in your house. Those kind of images tortured me for a while. Those kind of very horrific images. Acting is something that I want to do, I want to practice, but obviously a 20-something Indian guy, it's a tough gig to find. Even if you write them and direct them, it's a tough gig to find. And I wrote this little part for me to be the doctor, and my parents were all doctors, so I thought it'd be a nice little thing to put on the white coat and be a doctor for a day. And it was a nerve-wracking thing, because it's not, obviously my energy wasn't involved in what's my character thinking and all that. I was directing the movie, and the day came on the schedule when I didn't go to the set straight. I had to go to makeup, and I was like, oh man. Actually, it was a longer scene, and I was so bad I just cut most of it out. So it was a scene, actually, Toni Collette playing Lynn, she gets really mad at me in that scene, and she calls me all these bad things, and I just couldn't pull it off, so I just trimmed it all down into a nice, neat, me staring at her scene. My goal as a filmmaker is to try to make cultural phenomena. How do you make that happen, and how do you get under the skin and define a time and a place, and really take your place in society that affected you. People are still affected by the original Exorcist. When they think about it, that time period and all. My mom and dad were in India, and they talk about how it affected them. It affected the world, and The Godfather, and all these movies. Now these are movies that obviously became huge, gigantic box office hits, but I'm talking about how it affected the culture. You know, obviously Titanic and all those movies. How can you make these movies where it gets under everybody's skin, and that's the original goal, and you kind of forget about it and you go make your movie after a while. But the Sixth Sense opened on my birthday, August 6th, which was another sign that the movie was just in a weird place and being guided. It opened on my birthday, and my first two movies grossed $350,000 combined, and The Sixth Sense on its opening day on Friday night grossed $8 million, and that's like a million and a half people saw it on opening night. And I was like, my God, that's amazing. And so that's one thing. But then it's Sunday. That Sunday did more than Friday, which is a really unusual thing. It means word of mouth is starting to go already. People are like, the Sunday was bigger than Friday. And so that weekend we grossed 27 million, which is gigantic, and was the biggest weekend in the history of August. And so that in itself is an amazing thing, but that is not truly amazing, because you can, in this day and age, you can take a mediocre film and promote it crazily and get that. I think you can. Now, the second weekend, that is the movies weekend, the second weekend, and that decides a lot of things, and that tells you a lot. And a normal drop-off for a movie in the summer is probably 45%, drops off. And a great movie drops off like 30%. Just a smash hit drops off 25%. We almost didn't drop off. We had a 2% drop, and it was almost identical, 26.8 and whatever it was. And that was the moment I got that call on Saturday morning, on the second Saturday. That's when I was like, because they were like, I'm telling you, Knight, this never ever happens. Never ever happens. And I hung up the phone and I was like, gosh, we might have our cultural phenomenon. And that I teared up in the kitchen when I was thinking that, because it wasn't just like having a big hit. It's just such a physical thing, having a big hit, but to have a movie that people are recommending and going to see over and over again, wow. And it just kept going on and on. And then our fifth weekend was Labor Day weekend, and we grossed about $30 million on that weekend, and it's just ridiculous. Only two movies have done that kind of business at the time, and it was Sixth Sense and Titanic, and we couldn't believe it, but we had a cultural phenomenon. I was on it's everywhere. I've heard rabbis giving sermons about it. In colleges, they had I heard this economics class where my friend was in, and he said they were teaching it like Sixth Sense tickets cost $7.50, and 750 people went to get, and they just doing charts that way to interest them. And on Jay Leno they did spoofs and on and on and on, and sitcoms. They're referring to it. And I was playing basketball, a pickup game at the school, and one of the guys on the team threw the ball, and he threw it to nobody, and it hit the fence. And the guy's like, the other guy on the team said, "What do you think? You see dead people or something?" And he didn't know that I directed the movie, and it just had seeped into the culture. I see dead people. It's everywhere.
When we asked Knight who did he see as the sort of perfect actor as in the role of Malcolm, he said, well, I wrote it for Bruce Willis, but obviously he's kind of a pie-in-the-sky choice, and I didn't, there's no chance of getting him or anything. And now that we've got this small budget and we can make the movie, that's what I was thinking. Who can we get to be in the movie that fits within our budget? And so I said to him, well, why don't we take a shot at Bruce? All I can say is no.
I called my agent and said that I wanted to do it. I said, raised my hand and asked to be included.
Yeah, The Sixth Sense. It's a musical comedy that we're doing here. Started out as a drama, kind of a ghost story, and then Knight, the writer-director, decided to turn it into a musical comedy, and we're all keeping our fingers crossed.
Well, Toni Collette was another kind of unusual situation in that Knight really wanted a South Philadelphian look, feel, speech, everything about this character. And somebody from Australia who's been in these other kind of offbeat movies, and I think there's a moment that when an actor comes in, they claim the role. and Toni Collette did that.
Okay, you want me to answer your questions? Who's going to answer mine?
And she's just such a wonderful actress that she just got it, and she just knocked us out. She claimed the role.
I was a big fan, a huge fan of Muriel's Wedding, and Toni Collette was someone that I asked to come in to read the part.
I started reading it early in the morning and I did not stop, and I bawled my eyes out. It was the most beautiful, scary, spiritual, real story and script that I think that I've ever read. I was at a really fragile point, and it made me feel good about being alive. It made me feel okay about dying, and that, I mean, for a film to be able to do that, that's pretty special.
I was amazed by the quality of realism and the quality of the supernatural that creeps into the story. It's not a movie that sets out to be spine-chilling, but it has, as the title is, The Sixth Sense. It just touches on that extrasensory perception that most of us have some experience of at some time.
I think Olivia Williams has perhaps the hardest part in the film, because if she's acting in a scene like the dinner scene, she's acting the film for the audience as they're seeing the movie for the first time, where Bruce is there and Bruce is late for their anniversary dinner, and she ultimately has to make a sarcastic comment, happy anniversary, and get up and walk away from him, her husband. And that's one way of playing the scene. She has to play the scene another way, where she's decided to go out on her anniversary all by herself to the place that her and her husband got engaged, and to be there experiencing mourning, and ultimately to say happy anniversary wistfully to herself, and sadly get up and leave. And both of those scenes need to be equally real and play at the same time. And I don't think an actor has ever been asked to handle that kind of challenge before, and she had to do it in scene after scene after scene. And if she hadn't been able to do it as effectively as she had, we wouldn't have had a successful film.
And then I met Donnie Wahlberg. Donnie is obviously, you know, one of the members of New Kids on the Block, and his teen idol, and for so long. And the thing was, I saw Vincent very different than Donnie. When I met Donnie, he was buffed, muscular guy. He used to call me up. He said, "You know what? I'm gonna lose some weight for the movie." And I'm thinking 5 pounds, trim. You know, get a little trim, maybe 10 pounds if you know he kills himself. He came in, and I didn't even recognize him. He lost 43 pounds, and that is an amazing amount of weight to lose in that much time, or any amount of time. The Vincent scene is the gunshot that needs to be heard through the whole movie. You know, suspense writers sometimes talk about the first chapter of a novel as the slingshot. That, you know, the first chapter, whatever happens, is the pullback of the slingshot. It has to be pulled back far enough so the whole movie rides on that pull. And our movie was like that. When he finished the scene, he just collapsed in the bathroom, and I was like on the bathroom floor with him, talking to him about it. I mean, it was amazing.
You have a secret, but you don't want to tell me.
Cole's role, it's so difficult, so complex. It seemed like the most impossible task ever. And then Haley Joel Osment comes in, and I'm like, what a cute little kid, what a sweet kid. And I said, okay, let's do the part. I was really beat. How many times have I done these scenes with these kids? I've heard my words just destroyed 1 million times with 1 million different kids. And I just was, so beat. And I just leaned back, and he starts the scene. And it was like, I've never heard the scene before. Like, I've never heard the dialogue ever said before. It was like a movie that I didn't write. It was just, all of a sudden, every word was perfect. And he finished the scene, and he was crying, and I was crying, and I was like, I could not believe. I go, oh my God, who are you?
Cole is for one, he's a fighter, and he'll fight whatever comes his way, whatever is bothering him, and the shadow that's over him for most of the movie, he fights it and fights it and fights it and will go down fighting. He's very interesting. He's a very interesting character. He plays on all kinds of different fronts and colors. He isn't just a depressed, sad little boy for what's overshadowing him, and he'll try and be a normal kid through whatever happens. He's a very deep person.
He's the most talented child actor I've ever seen. I mean, I would rank him with some of the best adult actors I've ever worked with. He really is just immensely talented and pretty much unaffected by his talent, and doesn't really make a big deal about it. But he really is a great actor.
In all great movies, the great movies, there's some element of magic. When I say magic, something that goes beyond paper where you go. You put A with B and you get this. No, it's something beyond that. You can't recreate it if you tried. You can't recreate it. And Haley is our magic.
In a film like this, where people are going to scrutinize what you've done, it's essential that you go back and you're very rigorous about maintaining the laws and the rules of that world.
Well, one of the things we really wanted to protect is that if you saw the movie for the second time, that we were true to it and we were honest about it and we didn't just pull a fast one. So we had to establish rules about each scene and how Bruce would interact with people and situations and physical things. So we had these rules, and one of the rules was that if a ghost was mad or angry, it got cold. When we have the angry ghosts in Cole's apartment, you see the temperature start dropping, and that's sort of a foreshadowing of what's coming, and hopefully it's building up a little suspense. And then we would see the cold breath. And that was only when a ghost was angry, because people have asked me, well, why don't we see breath when you see Bruce Willis's character? Well, it's because he's not angry, and he's trying to help the situation. He obviously doesn't know he's dead, which is another thing that Cole actually says. They don't know they're dead. He had to have on the same clothes the whole time. But that rule was that it wasn't necessarily the clothes he had on when he was shot. It was clothes that he had interacted with that evening. So he had his trench coat, he had the sweatshirt that he put on when it got cold, he had his muffler, he had his tie. So if you look at that, he got the same shirt on the entire movie.
Another rule that exists in the film is that with enough effort, Bruce Willis's character can impact the physical world. So as Bruce's wife and her employee are about to embrace over the birthday gift, he kicks the door and smashes the door and walks away.
So when he's out in public, like he's in the restaurant, you look closely when he comes up to the table and he sits down with his wife, he doesn't move the chair. So in other words, if you're in the restaurant, you don't notice anything strange going on there. It's just a woman who seems to be kind of sad having dinner by herself.
One of the most interesting things, I think, about the rules is they relate to the style and the idea Knight had about making this film, which was that he was very true to each character's emotional point of view.
He was kind of saying, I'm going to put you in the shoes of Malcolm Crowe, and at the end you're going to feel exactly what he felt. And so it's not a cheat. You're not feeling something different than the characters. You're feeling exactly what the character felt. Oh my God, I can't believe what I thought was true isn't true.
You should analyze the movie scene by scene in repeated viewings. You should look at every scene in the film, because there is some bit of art direction or wardrobing or propping that indicates, the events to come.
We wanted to punctuate certain parts of the movie, so when you did see it again, that you would notice that there were little clues along the way, and one of them was with the color red.
We used the color red to indicate anything in the real world that has been tainted by the other world.
The woman who poisoned her child is wearing red. On the day that he gets locked in the dungeon, Cole is wearing red. The doorknob that Bruce can't seem to get open to get into his basement is red. And red is used specifically to connote really explosively emotional moments and situations.
And anytime there was red by mistake, I was like, get it out, get it out. It was fun to go through the movie and just sit there and go red.
You can just go through beat by beat the movie and find these clues and layers, which are intriguing and fun. They were all there in the script, starting with Bruce's first time back in the house, from supposedly meeting Cole, and seeing that isolated place setting.
In reference to the lock of white hair that everyone's like, what's that about? What's that all about? This is one of those details that I put in when people that have had very, very traumatic experiences, sometimes they lose pigment in their hair. When they had a very bad accident or something, they wake up in the morning, they've lost pigment in their hair. it's a kind of a very cool, real phenomenon. And I thought, gosh, if anybody was going to lose pigment in their hair, it'd be these kids that have the sixth sense, because they turn around and there's somebody with their arm hanging off.
In that scene where Malcolm is talking to Cole in the hospital, Cole tells everything about Malcolm to the audience. They see dead people, they see them all the time, they don't know they're dead. And these shots, they're shots on Malcolm. Now, if you're really paying attention, you're going, oh, he's talking about him. And that's a clue that I actually thought we had overdone it. I actually thought we're giving too much away here. The audience is immediately going to get it because we're on Malcolm, and Cole is saying they don't know they're dead. Well, nobody gets it. So there are clues all the way along where you see that, when he's sitting there in the living room with his mom, you think they were talking, but they weren't talking. He's just sitting there and she's waiting for him to come home. When you look at it, you'll see that it all still tracks and all makes sense and adds up to the ending.
Wanted to go, he's dead, and here's what you missed. Boom, 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 boom. Now forget it. Let's get back to the story.
In the editing, one of the elements that we added was a series of images from the film as he is discovering, as he's realizing it, it's flashing back for the audience as well.
It was something I mentioned to Andy. I said, what do you think about going back and showing the moments that they missed right now? Because that is the fun of it, but I want them to stop thinking about that I want them to enjoy it and go, oh my God, and then stop, because we still have a story to finish.